Up next, our second project will be presented by Associate Professor Min Yen Kan about natural language processing for the humanities and social sciences. Associate Professor, please.
All right, everyone, welcome. Thanks again for all of our CSSH board for asking me to give a presentation. So I was racking my brain, okay, what exactly am I going to think about? Because I have no idea, right? Okay, so I'm going to warn you first. This is a participatory lecture. We are always told that we are not allowed to have students just sit lecturing and then passively receiving information. So first of all, I want to address Meredith Martin. Yes, so you may notice this slide. It is actually from your keynote in DARIA 2024, okay? So she wrote, I dream about workflows. And you know, when you give keynotes, your idea is to try to shake things up again and also call to action other people's work. So she had a talk about workflows and data. And so I thought I'd make a riff on that and try to insert my talk directly to her, okay? So my talk is called Datafying the Workflow, Meditations not on data, but Agentic AI for the Humanities. Okay, so I'm going to start with a project. It's a very old project. It's from 2013, over a decade ago. And that is when I worked with one of my PhD students to assemble a data set on SMS. Now, of course, SMS is ubiquitous, but these days we really don't use it for much interchange. There are all the spam and other things, the official notification, but back then it was a viable way to talk to each other. Now we have a lot of other things that have more interesting things like stickers, right? But you can see that this data set comprises of a fairly large corpus. It's the largest corpus in Singapore of both languages in Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, but English SMS. You can see some of the data that came out of that. I mean, I can't read it, even to this day as a parent, okay? I don't understand what they're talking about. But that's the whole beauty of it, right? We want to study our data, we want to study our language and pull things together of it, okay? So one of the key parts about this is to make sure we have curatorial access, right? We want to compile data, pull it out from a natural environment, be able to capture the vernacular that's being used, because this is a piece of history that if we don't seek to preserve, it will be lost, right? So trying as a computational social science or humanities person to preserve and curate that data is extremely important to preserve our long-term understanding of science and humanity. Okay? And the key thing here, I think, is we want to do this in a way that's replicable, right? Because the recipe that we use to crowdsource this has been used again for many other data sources that are now public or even in sometimes private information. So gathering WhatsApp or Telegram. There's another protocol that we can work with IRBs abroad and other places to accumulate these data sets and curate them for analysis and understanding for both humanities and historical archives. In another piece of work, even older than that, around, again, 2013, I worked with a set of researchers to understand the idea of how scholarly communication works. So my research area is in natural language processing in large language models, but I really like to study how the communication of science happens, okay? Like science of science, okay? One of the things that we did here was we took the genomic data sets of all of the publications that came out of the Genomic Institute here in Singapore. And we studied what happens with this. We studied researchers talking to other researchers. And of course, in graph theory, that's known as a dyad, okay? Two people collaborating with each other, and that forms an edge. Okay? Now, the interesting thing is you can also ask of these dyads, how are they connected with each other? Because oftentimes when we know A collaborates with B collaborates with C, then there is a likelihood that these two people get to know each other. okay, meaning A and C. So I'd like you to guess, what role does Singapore play in something like this, which is what we want to instigate here right in this room. Here's the punchline. What we found was that Singapore scholars, they do not produce a lot of research on their own. Okay? Yeah, you're laughing, right? Okay. But the key part that's more important than their publications is the fact that we are a nexus point. We bring people together. And that is what we are doing in this room today. We are bringing people from computing background, humanities background, together to work on common problems. And that is difficult. Why? Because it's interdisciplinary. Interdisciplinary means I talk chicken, you talk duck. And we're going to run afoul many problems, right? In communication. But the key point is, if we can do this properly, we will instigate new forms of knowledge, new forms of scholarship, new forms of study that we could not have imagined living in our own silos as we are today. So, Miguel told me, please insert an activity for everyone. So I had to comply. Otherwise, I'm not instruction following as a large language model, right? Okay, so I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor, and hopefully you're sitting with someone that's not the same as you. So I'm going to do a little experiment, okay? How many of us would say that we are categorized as somebody who knows computation or computer science? Please raise your hand high. I need you guys to participate. I know you had your lunch. Hands high in the air. Okay, I see a whole bunch of people who are not participating who I know very well. Okay, how many of us are humanities people? We would classify our humanities. Okay, very good. And how many of us would prefer, say that we come from an interdisciplinary background all over? Okay? All right. So what I would like you to do is observe, to talk to each other over the next 2 minutes, okay? We want to find what things you have in common. Find the latent tie, okay? And I'm just going to stand here, really, for 2 minutes and let you talk, because we all know if people interrupt, no talk will happen, right? So I am timing on this phone, okay? So you have 2 minutes. You guys have 30 seconds. Wow. I am very, very impressed. So the other danger as a faculty when you do this type of live thing is that people don't stop talking, right? You have to pull the class back together, right? Okay, so I'll just say one thing. That's the final quote there. It's actually not from me. I asked you to guess who it's from, okay? The bridge builder is already in your network. The data is already waiting to be named. So this was on Meredith's slides from Darius, okay? So she was talking about how different people negotiate what type of data is to be curated and then move together onto a computational data set, okay? And spoiler alert, I also had a dialogue, but I had a dialogue with AI. This is Manus AI's dialogue. What is this dialogue? This is a dialogue of me making the keynote slides for this talk. So the quote that you saw on the last slide was from the AI, not from me, okay? So this is very interesting. We have people doing data flow analysis, workflow analysis, talking with each other, and I'm sure you've been following the news. AIs are also having their own conversations, and AI and humans are having our conversations as well. So this is a keynote that's supposed to last 15 minutes, so this is my last slide, okay? So I'd like to ask you to think about what will it be like in the near future, because nobody can extrapolate in the far future, right? Beyond a culture of workflows, because we are arguing that compiling data is only one step. Compiling dyads and triadic closure is just one other step. What exists beyond that step? Okay. Miguel was also quoted in Meredith's keynote. He said, there is no data without work. That is, there is no data without interpretation, right? So even if I compile a data set, it isn't worth anything until somebody decides what it means, puts a subjective understanding on it. Okay? So I think this is very interesting because the workflow itself is a data item, right? You can reify it and think of the workflow as a unit in a graph, right? And we can compare workflows, share workflows, and decide how to compose these together, right? So AIs are also agents, but we ourselves are agents creating workflows in humanities, right? And computational social science. How do we combine these two things together so that we can trade recipes for how to curate data, OCR data, clean it up, remove outliers for analysis, but also do other things that we do right now as faculty. Mentorship. How do we graduate PhD students who are going to take the next wave of CSS forward, right? Recipes and replicatability, right? Many times we study these things in computer science, many of the top papers, they don't replicate. So how do we ensure that when we do this for computational social science, we have done the science and the humanities correctly? So that is the end of my keynote. I would just say, I think there is no interpretation without workflows. That is, there's no scholarship without interpretation. Thank you very much.